Stressing that Hong Kong will continue upholding the one country, two systems policy and safeguarding the rule of law, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam delivered her third annual policy address after some heckling in the legislative chamber, with particular focus on housing, land supply, improving people's livelihood and economic development. Over 220 new initiatives were announced in the address. Will these initiatives bring Hong Kong back to normal? What are the external influences behind Hong Kong's unrest? And who can really give those protesters what they realistically want? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by Professor Liao Fan from the Institute of International Law at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Via satellite from Hong Kong, I also speak to Mike Rowers, former Director General of Invest Hong Kong, which is a department in the Hong Kong government. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Welcome to Dialogue, Professor Liao. Chief Executive Carrie Lam stressed in her policy speech, the third of its kind, that during this special and difficult period of time, we must firmly stick to the one country, two systems. At the same time, observers, Chinese and foreign alike, are all aware that the Chinese mainland have so far done nothing to openly interfere with the internal affairs of the territory. So what do you think, first of all, the vows, vision, and the blueprint of the SAR government in easing the tensions, bringing law and order to normal, and above all, executing the vision of the SAR government to quickly bring the economy to normal?
This is a very, very important question, actually, because we all know that one country, two systems is the very foundation of the prosperity and of the long-term, I would say, existence of the Hong Kong SAR. But actually, so far, we have not have a very, very clear implementation of this policy in a substantial sense. Actually, as we have discussed before, in the past years, somehow we have attached much importance to the two systems side of Hong Kong, so as to show that we are going to maintain its special status. But as far as the one country aspect is concerned, actually, as you have pointed out, there's not much substantial things we have done. For example, a very important thing, the Article 23rd legislation has not yet come into being. But so now, actually, we are faced with a sort of dilemma. On the one hand, we all know that Hong Kong cannot be separate from the mainland, and one country, two system is the very important milestone of this, I would say, foundation of this whole situation. But on the other hand, there's kind of lack of mutual understanding, I would say, or confidence, mutual confidence for the time being. Especially, I would say, many Hong Kong citizens, especially those youth, they are somehow doubtful of the real intent or the real thinking of the central government. And now, I would say, mainland people, they are somehow have some doubt over the real thinking of those Hong Kong people. So I would say now it's time for the SAR government to quickly act. On the one hand, to use whatever they can to bring back the order. For example, those housing measures, those measures to improve the livelihood of ordinary people, to say that they are able to control the situation still. And on the other hand, they should be aware and they should be persistent in upholding one country, two system, and they should be loyal to the basic law, to the Constitution, to the central government. That's the very foundation of the long-term existence and prosperity of this whole system.
There's no question that the turbulence in Hong Kong over the past 4 months is widely regarded as a wake-up call for locals in Hong Kong, for mainlanders, as well as for overseas observers. So let me cross over to Mr. Mike Rowers, who used to be a senior servant of the SAR government. Hello, Mike. What can you tell us
Hi.
about whether governing Hong Kong by Hong Kong people as a principle is still taken very seriously? And particularly, what do you think of the feasibility of the one country, two systems policy? Will they still work?
Well, I think the invention of one country, two systems by Deng Xiaoping, this whole concept, was a stroke of genius. It absolutely is essential for both Hong Kong and Macau, and in due course Taiwan, to come back within the Chinese family. And I think it's worked well, as we've all seen in Macau, and in many respects it's worked well in Hong Kong also, because it preserves the differences about Hong Kong, but it's those differences that make Hong Kong so useful to the whole country. So I agree that maybe some Hong Kong people have been slow to grasp the implications of one country, and they've been enjoying the benefits of the two systems and haven't maybe balanced the picture enough. I think part of what is behind the recent disturbances is maybe the time limit. The people we're now talking about, who I think 1/3 of the people arrested have been under the age of 18. This is a very striking statistic. For these people, the 50-year promise in Article 5 of the Basic Law that the present way of life will be maintained, they've got less than 30 years of that to go. So they will still be in the peak of their careers, of their personal life, when the guarantee expires, or the promise expires. So I think that may be one aspect that we need to look at, to give them some reassurance. But I also agree that one country is very important. I've had no problems for myself accepting that China is our mother country.
In her latest policy speech, Lam proposed 5 billion Hong Kong dollars, just over $637 million, to increase the number of transitional housing units, particularly for those who are badly in need, the young, who may have lost what is called the upward mobility, including perhaps an improvement of their living standards and the housing conditions. Do you think this amount of money will be very useful in bringing harmony back to Hong Kong?
I think we can understand this policy or this step from two perspectives. First, from a practical perspective, it's a big sum of money. It can really help some people to sort of improve or even start their housing. And on the other hand, and more important, I think this is a very good gesture to show that the government is aware of the needs of the ordinary people, and they are dedicated to do something useful, do something practical, to begin to solve these problems. So I think if these steps can be put into effect in a quick and meaningful sense, it should be able to send a signal to the people, to those those hopeless or even desperate people, that actually there are hope, and the government is waiting and is doing something to really help them. So I think this is a very important step.
Mike, here is a question about the economic performance of Hong Kong, basically. Now, since 1997, yes, the prosperity of the territory largely rests on 3 pillars. One is real estate development, the other financial industry, and the third, perhaps, commerce, given the preferential policies and all that kind of favors that are granted to locals and those who are willing to help Hong Kong develop. What do you think of, first of all, the possibility that land supply, as well as some kind of contracts that the SAR government signs with the richest, very wealthy developers, to sort out the problem for young people, because their living space is so appallingly poor? And do you think this will help quickly restore the confidence of those young people?
Well, I think there's two things here. Hong Kong has a lot of land that hasn't been developed yet. This is in the new territories. It's agricultural land. Now, largely we have very little agriculture in Hong Kong. It's not suitable for a city environment. So we should be thinking of rezoning that land and taking it back. Now, the developers, the very wealthy families that you referred to, have been buying up this land at very low agricultural prices, hoping that one day it would be rezoned. And I think we've got to put these two things together, the land that exists and the money. Now, Hong Kong government, SAR government, is in an unusual position. We don't have historical debt. We have historical reserves. We have lots of money in the bank, and we should be putting that money to good use. Now, Mrs. Lam has made a start on that with the policy address, and 5 billion is indeed a large sum of money. But frankly, we have plenty more. I think the difficulty is going to be implementation, getting our hands on the land and then putting it to use. In the past, there have been a lot of vested interests who have not been keen on quick progress in this area, and I think the government has got to summon up its courage to take on those vested interests.
Obviously, some kind of deals must be done between the SAR government and the real developers, the richest. For example, Li Ka-shing, who published something in the middle of the unrest showing the alleged sympathy for student movement in Hong Kong, and he immediately drew scathing criticism from the mainland because he had benefited so much from the investment in the mainland. Do you think Mr. Li Ka-shing, along with other developers, may quickly agree to cooperate with the SAR government and through commercial ways, do whatever they can to help locals, to help the local government survive the current uncertainty and hardships?
I think the government should not be shy about using its statutory powers to take back privately held land into public ownership where there is a recognizable public purpose. We have a law which precisely provides for this, and I think we should not be shy about using the law and paying suitable compensation, and we have the money to do that. I think Mr. Lee's advertisement, which I saw, he was merely pointing out that the people being arrested, many of the people demonstrating, are the flower of our youth. This is the next generation for Hong Kong. I don't think he was supporting the unrest. I think rather he was saying we must find a road to bring these people back into mainstream society, behaving properly.
Thank you very much, Professor Liao. In the first half of 2019, the Hong Kong economy grew modestly by 0.5% year-on-year, the worst performance since the 2009 recession. Lam said in her policy speech, Hong Kong's economy contracted in the second quarter, however, and is widely expected to have fallen into a technical recession as soon as the third. So how do you view the sustainability of the Hong Kong economy?
Actually, the economic reason I have always thought that is actually behind this whole scenario is not only, or it's not mainly about freedom, about democracy. It's about economy. I mean, when the economy was or is good, I mean, things are easy. So the very reason why there are now these kind of riots, unrest, is partly or in greatly due to the reduced not good economic performance of Hong Kong in the past several years. But so in this way, we can sort of understand why there are so much uneasy sentiment, so much uncertainty about the future, especially among those young people. But sadly, they have chosen the wrong way. I mean, those kind of riots, those kind of unrest has kind of, make the future of Hong Kong's economic performance even more dire. Just a small example. I quite like Hong Kong, and I like to travel in Hong Kong, but I have actually cancelled my travel plan this year because it appears to me to be not so safe. So actually, if this situation cannot be, restored to the normal, if the government, this government cannot make necessary steps to bring back the legal order and stability, I suspect, the economic performance will be better in the near future.
Mike, in your estimation...
Well, I share the...
Yes, Mike, in your estimation, do you think the recession in Hong Kong is likely to continue? And to what degree do you think you're going to lose Hong Kong as a special status in Far East Asia?
I think there's a number of aspects that the professor touched on. First of all, I agree with him that we are in a recession now, technically an economic recession. I think Hong Kong is very resilient, the economy, so it will bounce back quickly, but we have to do two things. I think the government has to be seen to be engaging politically. This is a very difficult thing to do because some of the demands are unrealistic, but some of them I think can be addressed in a way that would satisfy legitimate concerns. And if we do that, then I think we can bring the law and order situation back under control quite quickly, and then the economy will respond as it always has. After a difficult period, it will bounce back very quickly. I remember 2003 when the second quarter of 2003 was very, very weak. The economy was in enormous trouble.
Because of SARS.
The third quarter was because of SARS, and the third quarter was so robust that the final year outcome of the economic performance was actually better than the budget forecast. So the third and fourth quarter came back so strongly. So I don't actually worry about Hong Kong's economy in the long term, provided we address the political concerns and address the law and order concerns, then the economy will take care of itself.
You're watching Dialogue with the Professor Liao Fan from the Institute of International Law at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Via satellite from Hong Kong, we are also talking to Mike Ross, former Director General of Invest Hong Kong, which is a department of the Hong Kong government. We'll be back soon. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. Professor Liao, do you think Hong Kong will remain competitive? And what do you think of the alleged resilience of the Hong Kong economy? It means how you look at some of the competitive industries that Hong Kong has been so proud of.
Actually, I'm still confident in the future of Hong Kong in the long term because of its unique, advantage, its unique status as a sort of a nexus or as a link between mainland China, or between China as a whole and the world, because of the one country, two systems policy, and because its, resources in terms of its personnel, and in terms of its human resources, in terms of its, human resources of those qualified personnel with language advantages. So I think in the long term, Hong Kong is still competitive, but I am concerned with how it can, return back to its normal condition as quickly as possible. Because, the rule of law has long been a much cherished feature of Hong Kong. But now what's happening in Hong Kong actually is totally on the contrary of the rule of law. It kind of threaten or, damage the confidence, the expectations of the world, and also of the mainland China, of the Chinese people towards, Hong Kong, how they view Hong Kong, what it is part of China, but now it sort of shows some kind of unrest. So this I think need to be dealt with very quickly, and so as we can restore the confidence and restore the expectation because at the end of the day, it's about expectation.
On Wednesday, Carrie Lam said in her policy speech that somehow the future of the SCR government and the Hong Kong economy will depend on its further and substantial integration with the Big Bay area. Whether the mainland authorities would provide Hong Kong with the preferential policies to give Hong Kong more opportunities. Now, what do you think of the vision of the Grand Bay area? Do you think Hong Kong is ready to get integrated?
I agree with what Ms. Lam has emphasized. Actually, Hong Kong itself, its resources, in terms of the job opportunities, in terms of this kind of other resources, are limited. Further development, certainly depends on its further integration with the mainland, especially under the Greater Bay Area initiative. So in this sense, I think, first, the central government, I believe, will continue to support Hong Kong to further integrate with mainland through this initiative.
But most of the rioters and the young protesters have shown their arrogance over Shenzhen. They don't think Hong Kong will lose out to Shenzhen in the competition, though a constructive one. And they still believe that Hong Kong, in many ways, is far superior economically to most cities in the mainland. Now, given such pride and prejudice against the mainland, do you think the younger generation are likely to be integrated with the mainland, to be part of the Grand Bay Area, to share dividends of the co-prosperity?
I love the word pride and prejudice. Actually, arrogance is associated with ignorance. The very reason why they think, mainland China is still far behind Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is still so unique, it's just because they're ignorant of both of the history and of the reality. So that actually highlights the importance of education. We need to improve on, we need to reform the education system in Hong Kong. We need to make those youngsters be aware of what's really happening in the world, the history, the reality. What is Hong Kong in this big picture of China, and what's the real position Hong Kong is, and what their future, their real prosperity depends on. So I think education is a very much important factor in this sense.
Mike, I wonder if you agree with Professor Liao here that education must be prioritized on the agenda of the SCR government. But given the defiance of the young students in their dialogues with heads of departments and presidents or vice chancellors in the Hong Kong case of the universities, these young people refused to listen. Now they only protested noisily. So what can be done to let them realize the importance of education? It seems that they don't give a damn about the future after being well educated. They simply believe in the protest itself in the street.
Well, I go frequently to the mainland. I have one son who lives in Beijing, and I have one grandson also there. And I go to see them sometimes in southern China. I recently took the high-speed rail all the way from Hong Kong to Beijing to visit my relatives. So I'm much more, I think, up to speed with the enormous progress made by China over the last 40 years, which is why I feel so comfortable going there and why I feel so relaxed when I'm there. I don't think many, it's correct, a lot of our young people haven't had that experience. I don't think they're going to get it from textbooks. Actually, they're not going to get it from lectures in class. I think they can only get it by physically going.
Seeing is believing. You encourage them to come to the mainland and take a look at themselves.
Yes, this is something they've really got to do, and this process is going to take time. The idea that someone speaking the national language in a part of China should be then beaten there have been a number of these instances, not a huge number, but some. And the fact that there are any at all is not acceptable. I always feel very safe in Hong Kong, still do. And I know I've had many visitors here who feel safe as well. But yes, there have been incidents where Mandarin speakers have been scolded, not just physically abused, sometimes verbally abused as well. This is not acceptable behavior. And I think we've got to get to the root cause of that and drill down. I can't see any alternative but taking time. It will take time.
Dangerous
Which is why I encourage the government
did break out when you least expected them to happen. Last question, Mike, is the U.S. House of Representatives have just passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act 2019. The ICI government responded angrily, saying we would not allow any overseas interference with the internal affairs of the territory. I'd like to have your thoughts on why the ICI government made a very angry response to the passing of the bill.
Well, you know, both Washington and London love making noises which are of no practical assistance whatsoever. And those noises really just are for their own purposes. They're nothing to do with helping Hong Kong or the people of Hong Kong. We can help ourselves. I'm not sure that we should be always asking for special privileges from Beijing. We have a lot to contribute to the country if we are left to go pretty much under one country, two systems. So I think that's what we should be the focus on. I'm not surprised. I sometimes think we're a bit sensitive on this subject. If they want to make stupid noises, let them get on and make the stupid noises. We don't have to react every time. We should be concentrating on substance.
Thank you very much for your honest advice. Thank you, Professor Liao Fan, for being a part of this meaningful dialogue on the economic policy of Hong Kong and measures to be taken by the ICI government to restore law and order so that Hong Kong will be an important part, a really important part of the Grand Bay Area, a very ambitious blueprint for regional integration to foster the overall development of the PRC when we commemorate the 70th anniversary of this country proudly. I will see you next time. Goodbye.